Fight fans, welcome to the PBC podcast, brought to you by Premier Boxing Champions with your host, Kenneth Buhari and Michael Rosenthal.
Welcome everyone to the PBC podcast. I'm Kenneth Buhari, and with me as always is USA Today Boxing Junkie editor Michael Rosenthal. Finally, folks, it's PBC Fight Week. I've waited a long time to say that. PBC returns this Saturday, August 1st on SHOWTIME Championship Boxing at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. We're going to get into that card in a little bit. Plus, we're going to have PBC VP of Communications Tim Smith on the show to discuss that and what's next. And of course, this week's toe-to-toe segment. So basically, we've got a lot to unpack here, folks. But first, let's examine some current events. The boxing world received some sad news last Friday as legendary trainer Naazim Richardson passed away. Richardson was in his mid-50s. I've read some reports that said he was 54, others 55, and 56, was battling a variety of illnesses. And most of you know Richardson as the man in the corner of Bernard Hopkins for so many years, Shane Mosley, many more. Mike, it's already been a pretty crazy year, but this one caught me by surprise.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it shouldn't. He'd been in ill health for a while, but it certainly saddened me, though. Listen, I didn't know Naazim really well, but I had enough conversations with him to get to know him a little bit and to really appreciate him. You know, first of all, and I think I've said this before, trainers are generally like salt of the earth guys. They're just like the best guys in boxing. I just love them. And he was just one of the best in that regard. He was the kind of guy where, like, You'll get them for an interview, whether it's on the phone or in person. You know, you'll ask your questions that you prepared, and then when you're done, you'll sit and chat with them for another hour about boxing. That was the kind of guy. He just loved boxing, loved talking about boxing. I guess he liked the writers. He was just that kind of guy. He obviously knew his stuff. He was one of the best trainers, you know, of our time. And he was also like a philosopher. The way he approached, you know, the sport and life. Yeah. You know, you just learned about life talking to this guy. I'm just going to always remember some of the wonderful conversations I had with him. Honestly, and as simple as they were among the highlights of my career. I could look back and say that I'm really going to miss him a lot.
Yeah, you know, I never met Naazim Richardson, never had that pleasure, but he gave me so many great moments over the years, so many memorable things, and he was like an uncle or something that always brought a smile to your face. I loved how you could, even during fights, you could hear his voice above all the others. In fact, one of my favorite lines from him was during Hopkins Trinidad. It was pretty late in the fight. Hopkins was like pulling away, dominating Trinidad at this point, and he went back to his corner. He was all excited, and he was like, "How do I look?" And Richardson said, "You got it, champ. It's in the computer." And I never quite understood what he meant by that, but yet it still, I still got it. He just had that old school way of talking and seeing things that I think that endeared him to so many. You know, one other memory that stood out too was when Shane Mosley was preparing to fight Floyd Mayweather, and Richardson at one point during the camp, talking to the media, he said that Mosley was going to tag Floyd at some point, that he was going to hit him, he was going to hurt him at some point during the fight, and that when Floyd got rocked, he would grow a tail, basically turn into a dragon and start spitting fireballs.
I remember that.
And that it would be up to Shane to step on his tail and punch him in the mouth. Again, and sure enough, you know, Shane rocked Floyd in the second round, as he said, and Floyd kind of turned into a monster at that point. I mean, he sort of ate it, really taking it to Shane. So so many memories of Richardson. He will surely be missed, and, you know, we send our condolences to his family and loved ones.
Yeah, I'm sorry. One last thing about him that we should mention. I guess most people already know this by now. You know, he's maybe best known. Well, he was best known for being Bernard's trainer, I guess. But he also was Shane Mosley's trainer before Mosley fought and during the fight. When Mosley fought Antonio Margarito.
Yeah.
He was the one that discovered the foreign object in Margarito's wraps before the fight. Well, most people know the story, but really quickly, obviously he couldn't fight with those wraps. He was allowed to fight. He got his ass handed to him by Mosley. But two things came out of that. One, Margarito was suspended, and Javier Capetillo, his trainer, was banned from working corners, I think, for life. Yeah. But the reason I bring it up is it just shows you how astute Nazim
Yes,
was.
that's
I
the
mean,
one
how
that was
many
in my mind. Yeah.
how many other trainers have watched them? Who knows if this foreign object or something similar was in Margarito's gloves in previous fights? But you kind of wonder, and you wonder how many trainers might have missed it in there. What not Nazim? Nazim saw something strange, called him on it, and look what happened.
Yeah, he just breathed boxing, lived, ate, slept it. Just one other funny story, actually, I was thinking of. I remember a few years ago they asked him about Deontay Wilder, and he said that kid is special. He's totally special. And folks say, he's too unorthodox, or he hasn't learned this, or he hasn't learned that. And he likened Deontay to the kid in the classroom who gets the answer right, and you ask him, you say, well, that's the right answer. How'd you get that? And he's like, never mind how I got it. It's the right answer, right? And you're like, yeah, you don't know how he got it, but he's got the right answer. And I think that's, what Wilder, that's perfect description of Wilder, and also shows the how Richardson saw things through the sport and how he was able to give you that sort of picture, paint that picture for you in the simplest of terms. Truly an amazing man. Now, there was some boxing this past weekend. The return of welterweight prospect Virgil Ortiz. I think he's graduated contender with his performance on Saturday, a 7th-round TKO over Samuel Vargas. Mike, what did you think of the fight and how Virgil looked?
I think he looked good. As he said, he did what he came to do. He knocked the guy out. I think all the tools are there for him to have great success in this sport. He's quick, he's precise, he's powerful. Obviously, he's knocked out every one of his opponents. I think he's got really good footwork. I love the way he sidesteps his opponent and throws punches. I even think that the referee might have made a mistake when was it Jack who cautioned him on not. Reese. Yeah, not walking behind him. It seems to me that he was just, he has really good footwork, and he knows how to use it, because he's kind of baffled Vargas. I love and something crossed my mind, because that's all the positive. There's mostly positive about this kid, but something crossed my mind while watching him the other night. I wonder whether he's diverse enough to beat guys like Spence or Porter or Thurman, guys of that ilk. I don't want to say he's one-dimensional, but he kind of is. Jab, right hand. Obviously, he's not a robot. He's much better than that. I just think that this is a kid who can add more to his arsenal. In other words, I think he's very good now. I think he's going to be better later. So how he does against the elite fighters, I think, will be the timing is when he fights them.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of those, Danny Garcia and both Spence had fought Samuel Vargas before, a younger, probably better version of Vargas, and dispatched them earlier or more one-sided than that. So you may have a point there, but I'm with you. I thought Ortiz looked really, really good. I don't think he's hit his ceiling in any way, shape, or form. No. But even now, as it stands, he's an offensive powerhouse, man, and he's got that killer instinct. He did get tagged a little bit. No one's perfect. Like I mentioned, Vargas has been in with some top fighters, but obviously he had seen better days. So, in your opinion, how far away is Ortiz from challenging the elite in a stacked welterweight division?
I mean, I think he's could be there now. As far as just fighting for a title, he's a hot fighter right now. People are talking about him, talented. I think he's got a lot of poise for a young fighter. Seems like he's much older. He's 22, right? Doesn't fight like a 22-year-old. I would expect him to get a title shot maybe sometime next year. The big question is whether he's ready for it. And I'm not 100% sure of that. I think I'd be nervous no matter who my fighter was if I put him in with Virgil Ortiz, but I'm not 100% sure he's ready. I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, and it probably depends on who he faces, right? I mean, I'd give him another year of development if I could. Maybe at some point next year he takes a significant step up in class, like against a contender or a top 10 opponent. You assess his performance after that, and then you sort of, go from there. So maybe end of 2001, probably closer to 2022. That's when you throw him in, against the elite. I think he will do well. Now, it wasn't all good on that card Saturday. I'm sure many of you saw the women's bout that took place. It was disturbing, actually. Sinisa Estrada absolutely obliterated Miranda Adkins in 7 rounds.
7 seconds.
7 seconds, excuse me, 7 seconds. Adkins was a last-minute replacement. Even my mouth couldn't believe what was Adkins was a last-minute replacement. Now, usually fights with the late substitute don't turn out well, but this was pretty bad even by those standards, Mike.
Yeah, there's a lot of mismatches, like as you just said. There's a lot of mismatches in boxing. We talked about this last week. How people are
Right.
set up to fail. They're set up to get beat up. But I can't remember when I was this angry. The last time I was this angry after a fight, I was just angry. I just thought that the way I wrote it, I wrote a column about this. Where it was they pushed her in front of a train, a moving train. Um, Sinisa Estrada's. She's coming off a victory over Marlon Esparza as an Olympian. She's like this. She had a good, I guess she had a good amateur career. She's a seasoned pro. She's a real fighter. She's good. She's really good. And Miranda Atkins is 42 years old. She took up boxing at 39. She only had five fights, and I'm guessing that's it. She's never had any more than 5 fights. 4 of her 5 opponents were fighting for the first time. So basically, this is somebody basically just walking out of a exercise. I don't want to exaggerate. That's basically what it is. Walking out of an exercise class in a local gym and fighting a real seasoned professional fighter. So the results were predictable and gruesome the way it came down. She was rendered unconscious in 7 seconds. And what I wrote is the people who oversee boxing, in this case, the California State Athletic Commission and Golden Boy and DAZN, you need to look out. The well-being of these fighters are in your hands. You got to do a better job of looking after these people. I mean, that was just it was horrible, and that's why I was so angry about it. They really failed him. And to his credit, and I really like Andy Foster. He's the executive director of the California State Athletic Commission. He came out, maybe it was yesterday, and said that he blew it. He took responsibility. He said, "quote unquote," I blew it. He had never. I guess it was for a minor WBC belt, some kind of belt, a secondary WBC belt. And he said, I've never not sanctioned a WBC belt. I think he will going forward now if it's a situation like this. Anyway, bottom line is, my goodness, this woman could have been hurt really seriously or worse. You just can't let this kind of thing happen.
Yeah, I agree with you. It was disturbing to see what happened even after the first bell rang. I mean, she didn't even want to leave her corner. She literally just stood there frozen, and Estrada ran up on her and threw a bunch of punches and knocked her out in a matter of seconds. She didn't even know how to defend herself.
It's like getting assaulted on the street. It was just horrible.
Just wow. She looked, absolutely lost, and it was crushing to watch. And like you said, a reminder of how dangerous this sport is, and the sort of precautions that we need to take going forward. Hopefully there's a lesson learned from that and we don't see something like that again. But this is boxing. And in case you guys missed it, a 54-year-old Mike Tyson is going to be taking on a 51-year-old Roy Jones Jr. in an exhibition bout this September. Whatever that means as far as the exhibition bout part. There won't be a winner, but I think it's going to be 12-ounce gloves that'll be used. Yet, Mike, I'm still concerned about the health of both of these guys going into that.
It's an interesting juxtaposition talking about this women's fight and then going into like 2 old guys fighting. Yeah. But in the case of the old guys, maybe I'm just being a little naive here. I'm not really that concerned. Listen, you never know what might happen in the ring. It could start as something playful and turn into something more serious in the heat of the moment. Or even if they're playful, something bad could happen, I suppose. I just don't think it's going to. I'm guessing, and it actually seems kind of clear to me that they have a clear understanding that this is just 2 guys doing easy sparring with oversized gloves. They're kind of like, they're both clear on this, it seems to me, and I'm just not too worried about their well-being. I think they're going to be fine.
I hope you're right. My concern is this, that they are going to hit each other. Yeah, and Jones has been chinny since 2003, 2004, the Antonio Taro fight. True. Tyson hasn't fought in over 15 years. He hasn't won in 17 years. So, and the things that both of these guys are so competitive. Yeah, I'm watching them train and so forth. I just don't understand it. I've seen a lot of people share similar concerns, yet nearly all admit that they're going to watch it. Mike, are you in that group? What does it say or not say about us that despite all that, chances are most of us are probably going to watch it?
I wouldn't watch it if I weren't a boxing journalist. I really have next to no interest in it whatsoever, but I will watch because it's part of my job. but my heart certainly wouldn't be broken if I somehow missed it. I guess I have some curiosity about what it might look like. And I suppose there's some nostalgia at work for some people, not so much me. I'm not really 100% even get it why people are so excited about it. I mean, these guys are in their 50s. They're going to play around in the ring for a while. It just doesn't sound very interesting to me. It sounds kind of boring.
You know, it's Mike Tyson, and anything he does, he's proven that anything he does draws interest. And now he's getting back into the ring. He's been teasing with those videos and looking in great shape. And then, of course, you have Roy Jones Jr., who's no slouch in terms of popularity either. I mean, my brother texted me over the weekend, like, you going to watch that fight? He hasn't texted me about a fight in ages. So, I think the casuals are certainly interested. And, look, I don't know. My prayer is that they come out healthy, faculties intact. They both make a boatload of money doing it, and then we can move on to, the real fights that are taking place, and there are plenty of them. Speaking of which, before we discuss the PBC fight of the week, don't forget to visit the PBC IG page for this week's PBC Mask giveaway trivia question. Now, every week we're going to announce a new trivia question here on the podcast and the PBC Instagram page. And then on Friday, we'll pick 5 winners who correctly answer the trivia question. Now, those winners will receive a pair of PBC masks. In order to enter this giveaway, you got to submit your answer in the comments of the giveaway post on the PBC IG Instagram page, IG page or Instagram page, whatever you want to call it. There'll also be a link in our show notes. And you must also follow PBC on Instagram and subscribe to us, the PBC podcast. So with that, here's this week's trivia question. When did Jermall Charlo, not Mel, Jermall Charlo, capture his first world title, and who was his opponent? I'll give you guys a little hint. The fight was also Charlo's PBC debut. Now, remember to submit your answers in the comments of the giveaway post on the PBC Instagram page. And again, there will be a link in our show notes. And you must also follow the PBC IG page and the PBC podcast. All right, that's enough of that. Let's move on to the PBC fight of the week. This Saturday, August 1st, Premier Boxing Champions returns with a triple header on SHOWTIME Championship Boxing live from the Mohegan Sun in Connecticut, where there will not be a crowd. And in the main event, we're going to see 2 undefeated super bantamweights, Stephen Fulton Jr. versus Angelo Leo, with the vacant WBO World 122-pound title on the line. But before we dig into the fight, Mike, let's start with the essentials.
Okay, here we go. Here are the essentials. Stephen Fulton. I added a category here because of the long hiatus from boxing. His last fight was on January 25th. He outpointed Arnold Kagai. Angelo Leo's last fight was December 28th. He stopped Cesar Juarez in 11 rounds. Here are the records. Fulton's 18-0, 8 knockouts. Angelo Leo 19-0, 9 knockouts. You know, what you're going to see with the essentials, by the way, is they're remarkably similar in terms of what they've done in their career, how long they've been doing it, and even the results. They're both 5-0 in their last fights. Fulton has 2 knockouts in those 5. Leo has 1. Fulton's got a 44% knockout ratio, Leo 47%. Fulton's fought 107 rounds, Leo 99 rounds. They're both 26. They both fight from an orthodox stance. Fulton's 5'6.5", Leo 5'6". Fulton has a little advantage in reach, 70.5 inches to 69, but it's actually pretty amazing how comparable these two guys are physically and where they are in their careers.
Yeah, it's so similar yet so different. You know? There's been a lot of chatter about Stephen Fulton, deservedly so. I mean, earlier this year, he looked fantastic against Arnold Kagai, who's another undefeated fighter. He's from Philadelphia. Excellent boxing skills. He can get down and dirty when needed. In fact, aside from Mayweather Promotion CEO Leonard Ellaby, who promotes Angelo Leo, I haven't seen anyone picking Leo to win. In your opinion, Mike, is he being overlooked?
Yes, assuming that some people think that Fulton is going to have an easy time. I think Leo will be the toughest, or is the toughest opponent Fulton will have faced, no question about it. He's a complete fighter. He's maybe the only exception being his punching power, and even that is solid if he gets you with the right punch. The guy can box. Comes from a deep amateur background. He's a tough guy. He's smart. He can give anybody in the division problems. Does that mean I think he's going to win? No, it means I think he has a better chance than some people think.
Yeah, I think he is being overlooked to an extent, and part of that's because of how good Fulton has looked. But Leo applies great pressure. You mentioned it. I think he has more power than folks realize, and he's got some great minds, surrounding him at Mayweather Boxing Club, including the gym's namesake. I think he's extremely live in this fight. We've seen Fulton hurt before. We've seen him drop before. So to me, this is a true 50-50. Now, with that in mind, Mike, it's been a long time.
Back to predictions.
You've got to make your pick.
Okay, so again, I see Leo as a very good all-around fighter. I see Fulton as a potentially special fighter, which is a high compliment for me. He could do everything that Leo can do, but he's a lot more dynamic than Leo is. He's super quick. His feet are always in the right position. He's a good defensive fighter without giving up offense. And it seems to me he's always thinking and making good decisions in there. I just watch him. It just seems like every move he makes is calculated or he reacts properly to what's happening. Really, really high boxing acumen. He's not a big puncher either. Who knows? Maybe that comes back to haunt him one day. I don't know. But I think he has a chance to be a pound-for-pound guy. I think he's going to defeat Leo by a clear decision, but I think the fight will be reasonably competitive.
I like a close decision from Fulton here. I could see Leo coming on late, but I think Fulton recognizes that this is his time, and at his best, he's probably slightly better than Leo, in my opinion. I expect him to utilize his skills, and he's going to need all of them. But you mentioned it. He does everything a little bit better, so he's going to win a decision. It may not necessarily be aesthetically pleasing, but I think it'll be close but clear is how I would put it. Now, keep in mind, guys, Mike Stradamus is up only one game in our prediction league. You're 10-3, and I'm 9-4. So nothing changes here, regardless of whatever happens. We aren't predicting the other bouts on the card, but just to remind the guys, there are some great battles. There's another match between two undefeated super bantamweights, Tremaine Williams versus Rais Aleem, and that's a 122-pound world title eliminator. And in the opening bout, a rematch between light heavyweights Joe George and Marcus Escudero. George won a split decision in their first encounter last November, so that should be a good one as well. And so should our next segment of the show. Our interview today is with the VP of Communications for Haymon Boxing, Mr. Tim Smith. So first things first, Tim, you must have been excited to roll out the Showtime schedule. I feel like it's been a while since the last PBC fight.
Yeah. March 3rd, I was at the last fight in Brooklyn with Adam Konaski and Robert Elanius. And it was so weird that night. I was at the fight and my wife sent me a text and said, "Do you realize that the governor of New York has declared a state of emergency?" Right when the first fight was about to start, and I'm looking around the stands, and it's like 12,000 people, and nobody's wearing a mask, and everybody's screaming, and I'm thinking, boy, this is not good. But yeah, it's really been a while, and it's good to get back. Unfortunately, we'll be doing the first few fights without an audience, and we'll have to wait and see how that sort of pans out. But it's just, good to get these guys back into action, good to get something on television, championship caliber boxing back on television for the fans.
Typically, most fights and fight cards are announced one at a time. PBC unveiled 8 cards all at once. Can you tell us how much blood, sweat, and tears it took to put all of that together?
Well, I wasn't involved in any of that, but in talking to the people that have been involved in that, it has been a Herculean effort, to get the contracts done, to make sure guys, are safely training and working out, to get themselves prepared to come back, to administer the proper testing to make sure that these guys are not ill and that they, should be able to go into the bubble and be able to fight on fight night, and working with the various health commissions in the states and with the, the athletic commissions and everything, and setting up protocols, and, seeing what protocols are practical, which ones are acceptable to the state agencies. And, it really has been a major effort, and everybody that's involved deserves a, tremendous amount of applause and kudos for the effort that they have put into making sure these events happen. And, it's been a lot of cooperations on the sides of everybody, including the sanctioning organizations, because we have a number of championship fights, a number of interim championship fights, a number of eliminators, and that kind of thing. So you have to work with the sanctioning organizations to make sure that, they're on board with what you're doing. So, all around, it's just been a tremendous effort by everybody to get this underway.
Tim, how was the schedule kept so quiet, which is a little bit unusual, and what level of cooperation did it require from the fighters themselves?
Well, I think it required a tremendous amount of cooperation from the fighters, because, fighters always want to let everybody know that they're, what they got coming up, and, that kind of thing. You can never keep the lid on it completely. So, it required a lot of diligence and effort on their part not to spill the beans or go on, their social pages and let everybody know what was going on. I think to a certain degree, there was also some mystery on the part of some of these guys as to what cards they were going to end up on. So I think until maybe the last minute, they didn't definitively know, A, what date, B, what network. So they couldn't definitively go out and say, we're going to be fighting here, here, and here. They may have known the opponent because that's part of them getting ready, their strategy and preparation and everything. But, I don't know if they, even knew the dates or the locations or any of that information as to where they would end up fighting. So, but I was surprised. I was as surprised as you that they could keep that under wraps for as long as they did. Some portions of it leaked, but not a lot. Not a lot got out. And mainly what leaked were the fights that everybody had anticipated were going to be made anyway. The Charlo brothers, the Charlo twins, Gervonta Davis and Leo Santa Cruz. Those were, fights that had been at least in the rumor mill for several months. But the rest of it, nobody knew. So they did it. The fighters, the managers, the corners, the people in the gym where they were working, all did an outstanding job of keeping the wraps on things.
So one thing I noticed is that these aren't just showcases for the PBC fighters; they're real fights. Was there ever any consideration of just getting them back into the ring against just anyone, given the current pandemic, or did you guys want, a higher level of competition?
I think we wanted a higher level of competition. I don't think, well, from our perspective and with our philosophy, I don't think you can come back with showcase fights for people. People have been waiting for a long time for legitimate, 50-50 matchups, intriguing matchups. And that's what, we tried to give them. So I think that was a concerted effort on our part not to have, showcase fights. Now you can't promise that there aren't going to be any showcase fights, in at any part of the schedule going forward with our Fox shows or anything else. You can't promise that, but we've made a very good effort to make all of these fights very competitive and 50-50 fights because the fans deserve that after such a long hiatus. And the boxers themselves deserve that too.
Right.
And to be honest, we have guys on our roster that want to test themselves. They're anxious to test themselves. You don't have guys that are begging off of challenges and everything. So they deserve a lot of credit as well, because they could very well just turn down fights and go, no, I don't want to fight that guy. Not coming back after such a long layoff.
Right.
So they deserve some credit as well.
Very good. Each of these cards obviously has its own appeal, but overall, what stands out to you about the schedule? Anything in particular?
I love the doubleheader with the Charlo. And I know we've had the Charlos on the same card, but I love the fact that they are going to be headlining their own separate cards on the same night. And, you know, I like the uniqueness of that. And I like the fact that they are both in the kind of matches that could be definitive fights for them. I mean, neither one of them, in my estimation, have had a career-defining fight, although you could call the second fight that Jermell had with Tony Harrison a career-defining fight.
Yep.
But, you know, it's not, you know, when you're talking about a title unification fight on a big stage, on a big platform like pay-per-view, that's really, you got to show us what you're made of against a guy who not only defeated Julian Williams, but handled him, you know, in a dominating fashion. So, you know, that's a really, you know, that's a man's fight right there. And, you know, Jamal being in against Derevchenko, that to me is a career defining fight at middleweight for him. So we're gonna really see what they're made of, both mentally and physically, you know, in the fights that they're in. And those are the kind of fights that sort of intrigue me, you know, that I sort of, you know, get excited about. But that's the one, that's the hook to this schedule for me. And I know everybody says Gervonta Davis and, you know, Leo Santa Cruz. And, you know, that is an outstanding fight as well. But I just like the uniqueness of that twin bill. You know, it reminds me of baseball, where you come to the stadium at 4:00 and, you know, you got the first game, you know, at 4, and then you got the nightcap. So I sort of like that aspect of it.
It's also a little bit like the Don King cards of a couple generations ago. Yes. How often these days do you get 4 fighters of that quality on the same pay-per-view card?
No, and Kenneth and I were talking about this earlier, where, you know, you have Felix Trinidad fighting underneath Mike Tyson.
Right, yeah.
You know, Julio Cesar Chavez fighting underneath Mike Tyson. And, you know, so, yeah, it was, you know, it was for us older people who grew up watching that, we just sort of took it for granted that, you know, there'd be like these incredibly stacked cards, and, you know, but now you don't see that as much. And so it really is refreshing. And I remember on the Holyfield Lennox Lewis card, Fernando Vargas was fighting at like 4:00 in the afternoon because the card was so stacked.
Crazy.
You know? It was, you know, it was a crazy card. But yeah, sometimes you just don't get those, you know, you don't get those opportunities to see that. And now you have an opportunity to see that stacked cards, because you have to, when you're doing, you know, pay-per-view now in this environment and in this climate, you have to give people added value. You know, it just can't be the way, you know, the normal pay-per-view. You got to give people added value. If they're paying money for it, you got to give them added value.
Well, I think the Charlo doubleheader certainly fits that description. Can you tell us what the thought process was behind the decision to put them both on one card and to go with that doubleheader format?
Well, I think the matchup sort of created that. You know, you don't want to be in a situation where you double dip. You know, both of them deserve to be to have that pay-per-view shot. You know, and have that shot at establishing themselves as stars, you know, like extra stars, bigger stars than they are already. And, you know, it just seemed natural. They're twins. And the thing that perhaps sometimes is lost on them is that they're better together than they are separate. They are a better attraction together. You know, so why not put them together? Not necessarily like they were put together the first time, you know, when they debuted on Fox, to debut the Fox television PBC series, but put them in a pay-per-view where they are headlining their own shows. You know, each one of their shows are a separate show, but it just happens to be on the same night. So the thinking was, you know, if you're going to have a twin bill with anybody, it's a natural to have a twin bill with twin brothers.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, the not just that fight, but the announcement of all the fights created a lot of excitement. We saw it on social media. It was met with positive feedback from the fight fans, and just a lot for them to look forward to. However, there were a lot of prominent boxing media members who were sort of quiet on the schedule. What was your reaction to that?
Well, I mean, I really don't worry that much about the reaction of the boxing journalists, because I know that they're pundits and they're going to pick at everything. And for us, we want the fans. We want people to come and enjoy and be entertained. You know, and they're customers, and they're paying customers. So we care more about the satisfaction of the paying customers. Yes, we cater to the press. We allow them to interview the fighters and, you know, have access to the events and everything. But, you know, at the end of the day, the bottom line is we're making shows for boxing fans. And yeah, the press is important, and we don't discount the role of the media and that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, the fans, you know, are primarily who we're programming to, if that makes sense.
Sure.
It does. Did you get the sense that the fans were excited? I think we certainly felt that just, you know, browsing through our Twitter feeds and so forth.
Yeah. I got the sense that the fans were very excited about it, and I think they were excited about the fact that there were some big names and some, you know, intriguing matchups for, you know, finally coming back, and to be able to see, you know, familiar faces in meaningful fights, you know, and the fact that they all came tumbling out at one time, you know, it's just like, you know, opening a bag of goodies or hitting a piñata and all your favorite candy falls out, you know, and they're not being, you know, licorice or something, you know, the piñata not being full of, you know, black licorice or red licorice or whatever. I just happen not to like licorice. I know there are some people out there that love licorice, but for me, it would be like, you know, you hit the piñata and, you know, Snickers bars and Mr. Good bars and, you know, Almond Joys and, you know, that kind of stuff fell out. So, but it was, you know, it was a treat to see, you know, the name fighters and in championship fights and in meaningful fights, you know, come out. So, and I think people have been thirsting for that. People have missed that. And, you know, to get that basket full of fights all at one time was, I think, very exciting for people other than the truly jaded people that are out there. You know, I think that, you know, the real boxing fans who enjoy the sport were excited about it.
Now, based on what we're hearing from UFC and some other companies, there may be several pay-per-views in both September and October, and probably going forward. Is there any concern about going head-to-head with some of these other pay-per-views?
No, because I would stack up our pay-per-views against anything that somebody's going to put on pay-per-view in terms of combat sports. And, you know, in my estimation, there's enough to go around for everybody. You know, there's some crossover between boxing fans and MMA fans. But for the most part, you know, each discipline, each sport has their own hardcore fans that are going to make the decisions as to what, you know, they want to tune into. Yeah. But I'm not that concerned, because I think these fights and these matchups and these overall cards can hold their own.
Tim, what in your opinion makes a fight or a fight card pay-per-view worthy?
To me, you know, when I was writing, what made a pay-per-view worthy for me was, you know, where a boxer was at that point in his career, and then where his opponent was at that point in his career, and what was on the line. You know, I remember, you know, when Floyd first started out on pay-per-view, a lot of people were saying, "Oh, Floyd Mayweather, he's not a star. He's not a pay-per-view fighter. Why is he fighting on pay-per-view?" You know, but you see how long it took to build him into a pay-per-view attraction. And, you know, you have to start someplace, and there has to be some intrigue with the fighter that's on the pay-per-view, that's supposed to be the quote-unquote A-side or the headliner. He has to have something that drives his narrative. He has to have something that's attractive about him that makes people want to tune in and watch him, and not only tune in and watch him, but pay a premium to tune in and watch him. And, you know, I've always looked at pay-per-view as just like the something extra, the something special. And, you know, all these guys that are on these pay-per-view cards, they're, to me, I look at them as at the point where Floyd was when he first started out at pay-per-view. Floyd is like my benchmark for like pay-per-view, because if you go back to that era of pay-per-view, there used to be a lot of pedestrian fights that were on pay-per-view, and people don't really talk about this anymore. But I remember like Manny Pacquiao fighting someone on pay-per-view, and I can't remember. And it did like a really low number, but the expectations weren't that Manny Pacquiao at that point in his career was going to do 1 million buys. And I think that people have gotten into their heads that a successful pay-per-view has to be like 1 million buys or something, and that's just not the way that it is. The success of the pay-per-view obviously comes down to how much you're actually, paying the boxers to participate in the pay-per-view. But I say all that to say that Floyd Mayweather started out someplace. He had a beginning in his pay-per-view career. Manny Pacquiao had a beginning in his pay-per-view career. Oscar De La Hoya had a beginning in his pay-per-view career. So, all these guys had to be built into pay-per-view attractions, and, they started out at a certain level and they gained momentum. So, but what they all had was an intriguing story going into a pay-per-view and an intriguing matchup going into a pay-per-view.
Speaking of intriguing stories and intriguing matchup, we mentioned the Davis Santa Cruz pay-per-view card on October 24th. Tank has had some issues with making weight in the past. This is something that Steven Espinoza addressed. Are there any concerns on your part about him making 130? Because if he does, man, we have a hell of a fight.
I really don't have that big of a concern, and maybe you could call me naive or stupid or whatever, and I've been called that. But I'm also an eternal optimist. I believe that he will do it. And I hope that he will do it, but I do believe that he will do it because I think he realizes that this is a career-making, a career-defining fight for him. Yeah. He fought Pedraza, and some people would say that that's a career-defining fight, being a young champion and all that kind of thing, and then, taking on a veteran. But I think that this is a career-defining fight for him. This is a career-defining moment for him, and I think that, he is going to take it seriously. And I fully anticipate that he will, do everything in his power to hit that number. Look, the kid has had, 6 months to do it.
Right.
So, let's see if he can do it. But I do believe that he'll make it.
Okay. There are a lot of young up-and-coming fighters on these cards. Do you think the PBC prospects maybe get overlooked a little bit in the media, or there's just so many out there that it's difficult to get noticed?
I think it's a crowded field. I mean, I think that there are just a lot of guys that are very good and they're very young. And, there will come a weeding out process time. And the cream will rise to the top, to use a cliche. But I believe that there are just so many out there that sometimes they get buried, amongst the other guys out there, and they really have to do something to sort of stand out and sort of make themselves recognizable, and as they move up the ranks. And they'll get there. They'll get there, and they'll move up, and they'll be given opportunities to move along, at a progressive process, a progressive way, so that they can show their strengths and they can, get to the championship level. So, it's a crowded field, and the ones that, do what they're supposed to do in the ring, they separate themselves.
Now, Tim, switching course a little bit, we are eagerly awaiting the schedule of fights on Fox. Is that coming soon?
Me too. I'm eagerly awaiting it as well. Yes, it will be. It will be coming soon. I cannot divulge exactly when it will be coming, but it will be coming soon. And I anticipate that, you know, the boxing fans will be just as pleased with the Fox offerings as they were with the Showtime offerings.
So does that mean we may be in for a surprise or two, or?
I don't know. I don't know what your definition of surprise is.
Well played.
But no, I think there will be some matchups that people are going to be, you know, very, very interested in. I'll just leave it at that.
Now, all the Showtime fights are taking place in that bubble at the Mohegan Sun in Uncasville, Connecticut. Will there be more than one site for the Fox cards?
All just to clarify, all of those fights may not happen there. I think okay. I think that you're going to have to see how the landscape changes with regard to COVID and with regard to outdoor activities in terms of whether crowds will be, not crowds per se, but whether you will be able to have audiences outdoors or indoors, depending on what state you go to. So I think it's a fluid situation, but for now, those fights will be at the Mohegan Sun. But there is a possibility that they could shift someplace else, depending on the way COVID works.
That makes sense. Will any of the matchups be saved for when spectators are allowed in venues? I'm thinking specifically of the third Fury Wilder fight, for example.
That I don't know. I can honestly say I don't know what that situation is. I don't know whether that will be saved or whether you could at that point at a certain point this year be able to hold it at an outdoor venue or in a venue large enough, you know, where you could have social distancing, you know, if the state will allow it. So I don't know what the answer to that is.
Okay. Finally, is having two networks a help or a hindrance? For instance, last year, a lot of fans seemed to think Fox was getting all the big fights, and this year, maybe it's a little bit more spread out. Is that difficult to manage, or have you guys sort of just come to terms with that?
Well, you know, I mean, we got like 130 something fighters, so having two networks where you can spread the love a little bit is definitely beneficial. I think that you have to figure out how best to utilize the assets that you have and get maximum exposure for all of your guys. We have so many guys that, you know, even if they all fought on Showtime, you wouldn't have enough dates. You know, Showtime is not going to do, you know, 24, 36 championship fights a year on their network. They're just not going to do it. But if you can spread that between, you know, Fox and Showtime, and then you can have some rollover on FS1, then you're able to manage that, you know. And you have the flexibility of moving guys back and forth to, you know, to the various networks and everything. So that's actually a benefit. I'm sure a lot of people that are involved in the industry would love to have a cable network and a terrestrial, you know, regular network as partners in boxing.
Absolutely. Tim, congratulations on the slate of fights. You're going to be bringing fans a lot of almond joy.
I love it. Can you tell Mike's a writer?
Tim, no, thanks very much. Thanks for taking the time. We really appreciate it.
No problem. Anytime, guys.
All right. Take care.
Take care.
Thank you.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, we are back, and it is time for us to go toe-to-toe. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with the toe-to-toe segment, every week Mike and I go back and forth on a topic or two, and this week it's pretty straightforward. We're going to name the top 5 PBC on Showtime bouts we're most looking forward to. Now, as we mentioned earlier, PBC announced its schedule on the Showtime network for the rest of the calendar year, and it's flames. I mean, plenty of great fights to choose from, and we're going to announce our top 5 on the schedule in ascending order. So, Mike, why don't you kick things off with your number 5?
Okay, I just realized I'm probably going to mispronounce the name. Nordine Obali versus Nonito Donaire.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to this fight because I want to see what Donaire has after giving Naoya Inoue such a tough fight in his last fight. Obali, obviously, if I'm saying that correctly, obviously is a very good boxer. He has clear decision wins over Rashi Warren and Takuma Inoue, which tells me that he's got something going on. Donaire has had some trouble against slick boxers, especially in recent years, but he's seen it all, and he showed us that he still has both ability and heart when he fought Inoue. I won't be shocked if Donaire wins this fight. I'm really curious to see how he looks.
Yeah, and power. He still has the power, and I'm curious to see what'll happen if he's able to land some of those bombs that he landed on Inoue. I'm with you. I think that I would make Ubali the slight favorite in this fight. I was really impressed with what he did against Rashi Warren. He really took it to him. I'm just wondering how he's going to fight against Nonito Donaire, who, as you mentioned, has seen it all and can do it all, quite frankly, in the ring. And so much ring experience. I think that's going to be a huge factor here. And if it's that version that fought Inoue late last year, then I think Ubali may be in a bit of trouble. Now, my number 5 is going down this Saturday, August 1st at 9 p.m. And that's Stephen Fulton versus Angelo Leo for the vacant WBO World Super Bantamweight Championship. I'm looking forward to it primarily, maybe not primarily, but one, because I've been looking forward to PBC Boxing's return, and this is the first one on the docket. And that may be a big part of the reason why it's on this list. But that aside, it's also a great 50-50 matchup. I mean, we broke it down earlier. I think it's great that Mayweather Promotions is pushing their young fighters, guys like Leo, and I like that Fulton is eager to test himself. So this is a classic battle between two young fighters ready to stake their claim as the best in a stacked 122-pound division, and this fight is going to give us some clarity, I think. And then finally, this is a classic matchup between an aggressor and a boxer, two guys that really who can do both. We'll see how Fulton deals with the pressure and how Leo handles Cool Boy's skill set. All in all, Mike, a great way to kick things off.
Yeah, that's a good call. It's the first fight back for PBC, which is exciting, and on top of that, it's a good matchup. So yeah. I am looking forward to it too.
Now, what is your number 4?
Okay, number 4, David Benavides versus Romer Alexis Angulo. First, Benavides is one of my favorite fighters. He knows how to fight in one way, and that's moving forward. He's always trying to hurt you. I love guys like that. And Angulo fights the same way. I think Angulo's limitations were evident against Gilberto Ramirez. He's not the greatest boxer. He lost a one-sided decision, but he's a big-time power puncher who could hurt anyone if he lands the right punch. This one is going to be entertaining as long as it lasts.
I like that pick. I like any David Benavides fight.
Me too.
He's so exciting. We don't know what his ceiling is. He's still only 24, which is kind of crazy. He's an undefeated 2-time world champion, and in a few years from now, he may be a pound for pound king, or who knows, or the biggest star in America. It could go so many different ways with him, but I like that fight too. I'm just really excited to see him back in the ring, and I think it's going to be more competitive than people realize. And another fight that's like that is my 4th favorite, which is the September 19th headliner, Erickson Lubin versus Terrell Gausha. I think this is one of the most intriguing bouts on the schedule. It's another 50-50, in my opinion, although many believe Lubin is a clear favorite. And to those people, I would say, don't be surprised if you see a big upset here. Terrell Gausha has the pedigree. He's a skilled former Olympian who looked better than ever last year in his draw against Austin Trout. Quite frankly, I thought he won that bout clearly. He's rejuvenated. He's been training nonstop. And, at 32 years old, he knows this is it for him. Now, then again, you could say the same thing for Lubin. It's hard to believe he's only 24 as well, just like Benavides. Maybe the best is yet to come as far as he's concerned. You can see how much he's improved under the Southpaw Whisperer, Kevin Cunningham, who also trained Corey Spinks, Devin Alexander, two Southpaws from the Midwest. But anyway, that's what makes this fight so great. Plus, the 154-pound division is so packed. This is a world title eliminator for the WBC belt, which is owned by Jermell Charlo. Now, a lot of you saw what Charlo did to Lubin 3 years ago, knocked him out in one round. Imagine a rematch if Lubin is able to work his way back to that. I mean, the possibilities are endless here.
Yeah, Lubin Gaucher is an interesting choice. I like it. I think Lubin's just interesting right now. I think he's bounced back really strong after that knockout loss to Jermell Charlo.
Yeah.
I think he's gotten his act together, and I think he's really good right now. And like as you said, Gaucher's got that pedigree. Nobody could look past that guy. If you do, it's gonna bite you.
Right.
I probably, if somebody asked me, I'd probably lean toward Lubin, but it's a good fight.
Yeah, I think I lean toward Lubin as well, but I have no idea what's going to happen here. And I am seeing a groundswell of people who are picking Gaucher. So who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? All right, let's get to number 3. Who you got, Mike?
Number 3, Gervonta Davis versus Leo Santa Cruz.
Okay.
I think this is a gamble for both guys, which is exactly how it's supposed to be in boxing. Every fight should be a gamble for both guys, in theory, right? I think the fact that they're scheduled to fight at 130 pounds is absolutely intriguing. I'm going to be frank and say I'll believe Davis is going to make 130 when I see it. I'm going to be optimistic, and I'm going to say that he will. Steven Espinoza from Showtime said he's motivated to make it, and he believes he will. So I'm going to say I believe it too. And it's a good thing for Santa Cruz, because I think that's the only way at which this fight would have been competitive for him. I just think he's too small to fight at 135, especially against a guy like Davis. So what we have is a dynamic boxer puncher in Davis versus a proven tough volume punching guy who's proven over and over again that he knows how to win fights. If he makes 130, this is a hell of a matchup.
Yeah, you know what? I love that matchup, and that's why I'm going to discuss it a little more a little later during this segment. Now, my number 3, I have a feeling maybe on your list as well. I don't know. I could be wrong, but it's Jermall Charlo versus Sergey Derevyanchenko. That fight is going down Saturday, September 26th on Showtime pay-per-view. I think you can make a case that if we get a clear winner here, that person is number 1 at 160 pounds. I mean, I'd pick the clear winner over the aging Gennady Golovkin, who I thought lost to Derevyanchenko when they fought last fall. In fact, Sergey could easily make the case that he's undefeated. It's an extremely dangerous fight for Charlo, who's putting his undefeated record, his WBC world middleweight title all on the line, and most importantly, his reputation. I could see this fight going so many different ways, but what I can't see is it being boring. Both these guys throw leather. I'm expecting fireworks. In fact, I think this could be the fight of the year, and that may, or it may not be the best fight on that card. That's how good that card is. But all I'm hoping for is a clear winner.
I will also talk about this fight in just a bit.
Just a bit. All right, let's get to number 2 then. Who do you got for number 2?
Number 2 is Jermell Charlo versus Jason Rosario. Actually, it wasn't that easy because numbers 1 and 2 for me are almost interchangeable. But I went with Jermell Charlo versus Jason Rosario for number 2. Absolutely love that fight. Charlo's coming off his knockout over Tony Harrison to avenge his earlier loss to Harrison. Looked spectacular. He's just like locked in right now, focused and locked in, intense, hot.
Yeah.
All the things you want in a star boxer. And so is Rosario, who stunned everyone by knocking out Julian Williams in 5 rounds the last time out. Remember, we were raving about Julian Williams, how great he was doing, how great he was, and how he was really found himself, and then Rosario knocked him out. So you have 2 hot fighters, both in their prime, both with knockout power in either hand, which everybody loves. This is about as fun as it gets for any matchup.
Yeah, and what I would say to all of that is that my number 2 is Jermell Charlo versus Jason Rosario. By the way, it's the other main event on the September 26th pay-per-view doubleheader, a unification bout for 3 world titles. Mike, you said it all. 2 heavy hitters, guaranteed to be explosive no matter the outcome. Rosario, you just spoke about what he did to Julian Williams. He's probably the underdog in this fight as well. I think if he wins, he's a strong candidate for Fighter of the Year. In fact, it'd be hard pressed to pick anyone else. Now, if Charlo wins convincingly, I think he enters the pound for pound conversation. So for me, this is a truly special fight, a truly special card where we could see history made. I just can't wait.
Yeah. Yeah, and it might not be the best fight on that card.
Right. That's what's wild, you know.
Yeah, which is what makes the whole thing crazy.
Yeah. All right. Drum roll, please. Let's get to it. Your numero uno, Mike.
Well, I think it's pretty obvious. Jermall Charlo versus Sergey Derevyanchenko.
Okay.
So I said it's interchangeable with Jermell against Rosario, but it really wasn't. I mean, Jermall is my favorite fighter on the schedule. So that in itself sort of made it the one that I really wanted to see. And Derevyanchenko is going to bring it in a big, big way. I'll probably pick Charlo to win, but this is as close to a 50-50 fight as you're going to get with Charlo. Charlo just has it all in my opinion. He could box, he could bang. He's intense. He's fun to watch. Just all of it. And Derevyanchenko proved against Danny Jacobs and Triple G what he can do. This is without question Charlo's toughest test at middleweight, just by far. And if I were, let's put it this way, if I were close to Charlo, if I was somebody close to him and his family or something, I'd be very nervous going into this fight, which again is exactly how it's supposed to be in boxing. You're supposed to be nervous before you go into a fight.
Well, I've got two questions actually regarding the fight that I want to pose to you. The first one is, what do you think is going to be the feedback, the reverberations if Derevyanchenko defeats Charlo?
Well, number one, I'm not sure people will be that surprised.
Yeah, I see a lot of people picking him. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he proved against Jacobs and Triple G that he's an elite guy. He's right there. I mean, he could have won both of those fights. The trolls, the doubters would probably attack Charlo. He was never that good. Blah 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 blah. Well, that's obviously not the case. It's just that Derevyanchenko is just a really really good fighter, and if he beats Charlo, good for him, because he'll be on top of, like you said, he'll be on top of the world.
Yeah.
If he does that, he's gonna be in a really strong position to make a lot of money going forward.
Now, what if Charlo knocks him out? What if he does what Jacobs couldn't do, what Golovkin couldn't do? What if he goes in there, fights a great fight, and finishes it off in style with the great KO? I mean, what does that mean for him? Where do you rank him? And sheesh, what's next after that?
Well, if Charlo did what Jacobs and Golovkin couldn't do in spectacular fashion, I hadn't even thought about that till right now. I think that puts him in a different class. And I'm not here to be a Charlo cheerleader. You just asked me a question. He knocks him out when Jacobs and Golovkin had so much trouble with him. I think it puts him in a different class. I think he's in the next level. Guys that are knocking on the door of, I don't want to say superstardom, but major stardom. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, of course, he enters the pound for pound debate as well. Now, my number one is taking place on October 24th on Showtime pay-per-view. You mentioned it. It's a great fight between two great fighters, in my opinion, Gervonta Tank Davis and Leo Santa Cruz. Now, let me explain why I've got it number one. I know it was on your list, but not as high. I'm going to start by talking about Leo Santa Cruz. I don't think folks realize how much this fight means to him, how hard he's going to be training, how he's going to be bringing all of his elite skill and will into the ring that night. And Leo Santa Cruz, who's already a Hall of Famer, in my opinion, if he's able to defeat Tank Davis, he becomes a legend overnight. I mean, a Mexican legend overnight. I can't wait to see what he brings to the ring against Tank. Now, as far as Tank, this is just as big for him. I mean, the guy has produced multi-million-dollar gates already. He's got a huge following nationwide, not to mention he's beloved in his native Baltimore. He has the backing of Floyd Mayweather and would not only be ranked pound for pound with a convincing win, but he could go from star to superstar. That's big as we, as a sport, look to see who will pick up the mantle that Floyd left behind. Look, Tank is only 25. He's already got some solid names on his resume. We've seen the talent, we've seen the speed, we've seen the power, but does he have the desire, the discipline, which you alluded to? Can he put it all together against the first elite fighter he's faced? And can he deliver that sublime performance, that, oh my goodness, look out, that star-making kind of performance? Those questions to me, and what I referenced earlier with regard to Santa Cruz, are why this is the biggest and best fight on the PBC on Showtime schedule this year, in my opinion.
It's obviously, as I said earlier, it's a great matchup. Question for you: what if he knocks out Santa Cruz, which nobody's ever done?
I have a feeling that that's what he's going to be gunning for, is to do it in style, and separate himself from that young group of fighters that are emerging right now. I think if Tank Davis does that, the sky is the limit for him. Now, a real good question is, would he stay at 130 if he's able to make 130 and knock out Santa Cruz there? But, you've got a bunch of great fighters at 30, a bunch of great fighters at 35. I'd love to see him in against all of them. And I think if he's able to face Leo Santa Cruz and knock him out, that would make him the clear number one guy among the new school of fighters, those fighters 25 and below. And you'd have to think that he could be the next pay-per-view star behind Canelo.
Could be. Yeah. I guess we should take it a step at a time and see what happens.
Yeah.
I was just imagining Gervonta against Teofimo Lopez. Would that be something? But Gervonta against any of these guys.
35, he's such a big 35 pounder.
Yeah.
That you wonder. But I wouldn't mind seeing him against Miguel Berchelt. I wouldn't mind seeing him against Devin Haney.
Berchelt would be amazing.
Yeah, great fight. Maybe even Ryan Garcia, since they go back and forth so much on social media. Although if Tank knocks out Leo, I think Ryan should sort of
let's not
chill out.
Right. Let's not overlook Mr. Santa Cruz.
Yes.
Again, he's the kind of guy who's, in a way, I don't know, maybe think of this. He's a little bit like Danny Garcia. He might not look spectacular, but he finds ways to win fights, even big fights. We'll see what happens. First, we'll see if he makes 130.
Yeah, that's the big question, right?
Yeah, and then after that, we'll see what happens. I think Santa Cruz is a Hall of Famer, so we better not overlook him.
Right. It'd be an amazing night, on social media if Leo Santa Cruz were to pull off that upset. I mean, it'd be bedlam. If there's a crowd in the arena, and it would be madness all over social media everywhere if Santa Cruz pulled it off. So I can't wait. All right. Well, that wraps up this week's show. As a reminder, guys, be sure to subscribe to the PBC podcast. You can find us everywhere from iTunes to YouTube. Also, don't forget, Saturday night, PBC Boxing is back. A battle of undefeateds in the main event. Stephen Fulton versus Angelo Leo. That's a 12-round world title affair on Showtime Championship Boxing. We want to thank Tim Smith for stopping by. Always great to talk to him. And we want to thank you for doing the same. So be sure to check us out again next week for more boxing talk right here on the PBC podcast.